Clemson basketball just suffered its most embarrassing NCAA tournament loss ever. What happened? We'll talk about it right here on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked On Clemson, and part-time host and producer over on 105.5 and 97.5 FM, The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're new to the show, be sure to hit that like and subscribe and notification bell so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to follow me over on X in between episodes at the Morgan T Show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Coming up on today's show, Clemson's first half collapse was an absolute disaster. Not only was it a disaster, but it was the worst in NCAA tournament history. We'll talk about how and why it happened. Chase Hunter and the Tigers tried to come back with an incredible comeback in the second half, but it was too little, too late. We'll also dive into what happened there. And then finally finish up the show with what does this mean for Brad Brownell and the future of Clemson basketball. This was the absolute worst first half of basketball in Clemson NCAA history. Really, it was a disaster for NCAA history in general. 13 points was absolutely ridiculous. Clemson came into this game as a number 5 seed in what many, including myself, had started to believe that a 5 seed was too low, was an underbid, if you will, for the Tigers. We thought that Clemson was much better than that. They were better than the teams in front of them. And we also felt like that Clemson had drawn a matchup and a sequential matchup in this tournament bracket that was very favorable to them. I felt that Clemson could go from beating McNeese State to beating Purdue and then even beating Houston and have an opportunity there. I felt as if the talent on this team, the skills that this team had, and the execution that they were able to do with the 4 that we knew were good was going to be able to get them through not just this game, but the next and the next. This team was built for a deep March run. Regardless of what you want to say now after the fact, I felt, and I know a lot of us felt, that this team had much more in them, and as far as talent and as far as execution, than what we saw on the basketball court today. What we saw instead, Clemson delivered a historically disastrous first half of basketball that doomed them really all the way to the very end. I mean, it was so bad that they didn't really have a chance. It took them so long to get back into a rhythm. When they finally got into a rhythm, they were just climbing their way back in, fighting everything they could, really being a definition of grit. You know, we talk about Clemson being a gritty team, being a fighting team, fighting to the last ring of the bell, and that is still very true. One thing that I thought going into this game, and we said it this whole week, and I tried to prepare you for that, is that McNeese State or any team, they could get hot and the matchups make it very difficult. Now, we thought that McNeese State was a little bit smaller of a team. It was a disaster. Clemson was absolutely out-rebounded, out-hustled, out-coached, outplayed. Clemson's first half offense was an absolute nightmare. They did not come ready to play. I thought that, there was a shooting slump, and we were told by experts that, this would just be something they'd get through and they'll get back to what you were used to the earlier part of the season and not the last couple of games. But that wasn't the case. Now, on social media, you told me, Morgan, it's the basketball. It's the fouls being called or not being called. It's the brand of basketball. I don't know. I mean, to me, those things are ridiculous. We know it's not the basketball. Okay. We cannot play this victim mentality that it is something that is out of our control that caused this game to be the way it was. Clemson just shot 5 of 24 from the field in the first half. From 3-point range, an absolute disaster. It was sickening to watch, a catastrophe. I mean, whatever you want to label it, it was that. As long as you're labeling it something terrible. They were 1-15 from 3, 6.7%. I mean, just saying that makes you just want to walk away and not even talk about this game. But we have to talk about it. They couldn't get into a rhythm. They missed open looks, and they just had no one that they could really count on. And it was unfortunate because they tried to drive into the lane. Things were opening up. They again started to get into this mode of terrible turnovers. Whatever it's been, the shooting has been gone. The turnovers have increased. The shots haven't been falling. And Clemson, again, turned the ball over 10 times, leading to 15 McNeese State points. Brad Brownell said post-game that they weren't prepared for their zone-to-man defense and how they bounced back and forth between the two. And to me, that leaves a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth, because if you're not preparing your team, that falls all on the head coach there. I don't understand how you could be so unprepared that you put up one of the worst ever performances in NCAA basketball history for a first half. As I mentioned this week, this team has won many games. But there's one thing they needed to do, and that is be successful in the postseason to avoid changing the entire narrative of this team. And unfortunately, it was not avoided. Turnovers were bad. Shooting was bad. They just didn't feel like they were in any kind of rhythm. They seemed to panic here and there as McNeese State was more confident. They looked like they were a more athletic team out there. The Cowboys were just more athletic than Clemson. They came ready to fight, and Clemson absolutely was not ready. They out-hustled the Tigers for loose balls. They were dominant on the boards, which, again, we thought that would be nowhere near the case. We thought Clemson would be able to just get every rebound at will because of Locken and Shefflin were so much better than the other two guys. But McNeese State came in playing with a chip on their shoulder, and also to prove, and it goes back to Will Wade. We have talked about it. If you listen to this podcast, you know this should not have surprised you. It still was frustrating to watch, but it should not have surprised you what happened here tonight, to this afternoon. Their big player wasn't Garcia as we thought. It was Brandon Murray. He came out so hot. He led the charge, and he was also intense on the defensive side of the ball early. McNeese State went on a run of a 19-2 run in the first half, and Clemson just could not answer with anything. Every shot they put up was an absolute disaster. Clemson's 13 first half points. You want to know how bad this was? The lowest in program history for an NCAA tournament game. It was the worst first half scoring performance by a 5 seed in over 25 years. And since 1986, the shot clock era, only 2 teams seeded 5 or better have scored fewer than 13 points in half. That was Wisconsin in 1999 and Kentucky in 1984. Just disgusting to watch. The first half was completely something I just want to erase from my memory. Give me the Men in Black, memory eraser. Just go ahead and shoot it out, and just to the entire Tiger Nation, because it was that bad. Now, I've harped on the bad. We know what happened. You watched it. You know what happened. Let's talk about the good when we come back from break, and then we'll go into where does Clemson go from here, and where does Brad Brownell go from here. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, shopping online, and entertainment, it is easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. They're your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I used Monarch Money, I realized just how much money I was spending on food. I couldn't believe it. I now budget a little bit smarter and I save a lot more. So take control of your finances as well with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's right. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling that energy from the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful, and that's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Curation makes it easier to find better value tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc., you name it. With seat views before you buy, there are no surprises and the lowest price guarantee. You can book with total confidence and get that peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Clemson's second half rally was electric. They nearly pulled it off. A miracle in Providence, Rhode Island, but it never should have been necessary. For 30 minutes, we watched the Tigers look absolutely lifeless. And then they got down 51-29 with 8 minutes to go, and something, I don't even know how to describe it. Something clicked. I think it started with Jaden Zachary. I mentioned on this show many times that I felt Zachary would be the key piece to the puzzle to get this team deep because of his defensive ability. Not only that, though, he came alive shooting the ball when there was really no one else to help him. And then he kind of leaked in and rubbed off on Chase Hunter and got Chase Hunter into an explosion. And they really started to come back. They outscored McNeese State 38-18 in the last 8 minutes. Zachary led all the scorers with 24 points, stepping up when literally no one else could or would. He hit 4 3-pointers when the Tigers needed it. Finally giving Clemson some sort of option beyond the arc. It just wasn't working out for them to dribble in. They were making dumb passes, one too many passes. They were turning the ball over. Every time they drove into the basket, it seemed like they were turning the ball over. Now, some of them could have been called a foul here and there, but they weren't getting those fouls being called. Maybe this team just wasn't ready for physicality. You look at the ACC tournament, you look at the NCAA tournament so far, and you think, what is the biggest thing that's throwing Clemson off? Maybe it's the fact that the referees are swallowing the whistle a little bit more than they were in the regular season. They aren't calling all these fouls on or at least in Clemson's case, and so they're having to be a little bit more tough. And they got punched in the mouth, not only in the ACC tournament, but also here in the NCAA tournament. He had Zachary had energy. He helped fuel the comeback. He helped cut the lead down to just a couple of points in the final few seconds. So I would say, second half, Zachary did not allow the first half to define him, and neither did Chase Hunter. He was scoreless for 30 minutes in this game, and then somehow he turned it on, finished with 21 points in the last 10 minutes of the game. He attacked the rim. He hit 2 big-time 3-pointers when Clemson needed, and nearly, along with Zachary, both helped get Clemson back into the game and had opportunities at the very end, but the time just literally ran out on the Tigers. They had no more options to go with, and it was really unfortunate. You kind of felt like they maybe could go on a run. There still was time. You looked at time of possession and what the odds were. They were down 18 points. So you're thinking maybe they need 9 possessions here. If each possession's 25 seconds, then, maybe that's 5-6 minutes, depending on how good McNeese State is during that same run. So I was kind of running those those math problems in my head, just trying to figure out, was it even possible with 8 minutes to go? And it definitely was possible. But unfortunately, Clemson would need to have played a near perfect game, and McNeese State would need to have kind of shut down altogether. Now, one or two stops here and there could have been the difference for the Tigers, because they ended up losing this game by 2 points. And you'll say, if you come back into it, you'll say, well, maybe if you look at it a couple of years from now and you just look at the score, you'll think 69-67, 2-point loss. Clemson was just a tough loss. They fought hard. It was a close game, and it really wasn't a close game. This would be one of those games that you would kind of remember as they screwed up so royally in the first half that they could not come back. They couldn't even with scoring 54 points. Just think about this. The team that they lost to scored 69 the entire game. So the defense was obviously there for them. They held them to 69 points for the entire game. Clemson scored 54 points in one half. This stuff doesn't make any sense. Like, how do you go from an absolutely terrible, historically atrocious first half to then a miracle, just amazing, high-scoring second half? And not only that, continuing to hold back McNeese State and give yourself chances. You really have to rely on Chase Hunter and Jaden Zachary to kind of get in there. But the rebounds were just not there for them. Ian Shefflin has no other help. And when Victor Locken, mouthed off and got fouled out, that was really it, because there was no one else that was going to step up and help when it comes to the rebounding. No one. I mean, nobody else got down deep. And at that point, we were still down by a bunch of points. So Brad Brownell went with Jake Heidebreeder, who is non-existent. I mean, Chauncey Wiggins was for the most part of the game either leading the team in points or second in points, and he really didn't do anything either. He had a late three from deep, but just so inconsistent, you couldn't count on him. And he's so tall, but not going to get any rebounds for you. So really, it was Chase Hunter and Jaden Zachary, and then Ian Shefflin. But it's just too easy to block out Ian Shefflin when it's just him and nobody else to help with the rebounds. So even though Clemson outscored McNeese State in the last 8 minutes, the Tigers did so many things great. They played with urgency. They forced turnovers. They got out in transition when they needed to, and they got so close. But it was just one or two plays at the end of the day that stopped this miracle from happening. And I think it all goes back to just not getting second chance opportunities late in the game when they needed them critically. I mean, you only lost by 2 after being down so bad, after having such a horrible first half. I'm very mixed emotions about this team now. I told you that I felt like if they fizzled out in the postseason, this team would be remembered as a team that just, had a great record against a bad ACC league, and the conference was bad this year. And I think that's what we're going to look back and say is Clemson had a great season. They had a great team that we all loved and we were all cheering for, and we backed this team more than ever. But at the end of the day, they took advantage of a down conference, and they could not get it done in the biggest games they needed to in the postseason. They fizzled out in the last 4 games of the season. I mean, really, they held on. They had such a great season, and the team just fizzled out and got cold and got turnover happy at the end of the season. And even a miracle comeback could not help them keep their season alive. And it's really unfortunate because you're going to miss a lot of these guys. And we'll talk about those guys in the final segment. Coming up next, what does this loss mean for Clemson? What do they do going forward? Who are they losing? The biggest questions, the biggest answers. We got them right here. Daylight savings snuck up on us again, and if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5-Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA Tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5-Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Whether I'm at home or traveling or at a game, 5-Hour Energy is easy to grab and it keeps me feeling refreshed. Head over to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. You see them literally everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized.
The NCAA Tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA Tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
This loss brings up major questions and concerns about where does Clemson go from here and Clemson's future. Clemson basketball is in a great place, but you have the bitterness in your mouth after such a terrible showing in the NCAA tournament. And it makes it kind of weird right now. The relationship to me is in a weird place. You just got off of telling the nation that you are going to give Brad Brownell a 6-year contract increase. We don't know how much that's going to be. We don't know if it's even been approved by the Board of Trustees, but we do know that that's been put out there on the table, that Clemson and Graham Neff have decided that they would like to extend Brad Brownell, and that's going to draw a lot of frustration from Clemson fans who expected more at the end of the season. Is Clemson basketball truly going to continue this run, or is it more towards the end, or are they kind of at neutral? I'll say this. I think it just is kind of weird right now. The positives, though, Clemson has set a school records for wins in a season this season. They made back-to-back NCAA tournament appearances since way back, the first time since 2008 or the 2011 season. So the Tigers finished the ACC season with 18 wins. Now, if you think about this, a 900 win percentage, right? 0.900. If you think about this, Clemson is in a situation where, have you ever thought about them only losing 2 games in the ACC, winning so many games that they're tied for second place to Louisville and one of the highest seeds that they've ever been in the NCAA tournament? You were kind of riding on a high this season. And in the back of your mind, you always felt like this was a down ACC conference for sure. But you can't take away from what the team was able to accomplish, even that. They still needed to win those games. They still needed to face those opponents, go on those road games, and they still took down big teams like Kentucky and Duke. So they had some good wins. They had a lot of quad 1 wins. So it wasn't like they didn't have a good schedule. It wasn't like they didn't have good wins. In the past, Clemson's always had 1 or 2 losses that were bad. They had no real bad losses this season either. And so everything worked out great for Clemson, and you felt like everything was gelling. And then, things started to kind of fall apart towards the very end of the season. And Dylan Hunter getting hurt was not good. And he was, yes, the mesh of the team, the glue of the team, whatever. But this team won 27 games. This team won 18 ACC games. I refuse to allow anyone to go on the victim mentality of it was because Dylan Hunter wasn't on the team. It was because Dylan Hunter was injured that this happened. Because this team was never about one player. We always bragged about that all season, about how it wasn't about one player. And Dylan Hunter wasn't even a starter until late in the season. So how are we all of a sudden going to say that Dylan Hunter was the key piece missing and caused this type of issue at late in the season? And things kind of started falling off with the shooting slump before Dylan Hunter was gone, for sure. So I don't think that we can blame it on that. We definitely can't blame it on the basketballs, as I mentioned earlier. I think that's ridiculous. I don't think we need to blame it on the referees, even though, I mean, basketball is basketball. It's always going to be when you play church basketball, you're always going to be frustrated with the referee. So I'm not buying that either. Clemson, but we don't want to take away from the positives of what Clemson was able to do. Brad Brownell built a really good team. He had, I think, he had the most complete team. You know, typically in the past, Brad Brownell teams were one player and a bunch of role players that really didn't show up when you needed them. And it was always on that one player's shoulders. Blossom Game, McDaniels, was always on their shoulders. And everybody else was just kind of like not really showing up. This team, for the majority of the season, everybody showed up when they needed to. As long as they could stay out of foul trouble, you felt like they could go up against anyone. And then the slumps started happening. And not only the slumps, but just a bad turnover started happening. The biggest negative for me is that it goes back to, we all know nationally the ACC is not up to par this season. Clemson needed to go on a deep run, not necessarily in the ACC tournament, because we knew that they would struggle talent-wise with Duke and Louisville. But they needed to go further than they did in the NCAA tournament. Instead, they're going to be one of those teams, those 5 seed teams that you always talk statistically. Well, there's always that 1-12 seed that wins. And I told you in yesterday's episode that, or maybe it was 2 days ago, that I don't think it's going to be McNeese State, so I picked another 12 team. I think I picked, I want to say North Carolina was 11. I picked another 12 team to win. Oh, Liberty, that's who I did. I picked Liberty to win and beat Oregon. So that was my 12 team, and I said, oh, I don't think it's going to be Clemson, but it was, right? And the problem that we have now is that you're not going to have Ian Shefflin. You're no longer going to have Chase Hunter. You're no longer going to have Victor Locken, so these guys, Jaden Zachary, also, I believe all of these guys are in their very final season with the Tigers. So you're not going to really have any of the starters left. And the guys that are left over, including the new freshmen that are coming in, a lot of question marks there and how far they can take this team in the season, and if they can get them into the postseason. This is going to be a year where Brad Brownell is going to have to work his magic in the transfer portal, and Clemson's going to have to pay a good amount of money to rebuild this roster back. And that's what scares me too, is because we're getting into a situation where, with revenue sharing and all the other rules that are coming into play, that football is going to demand all the money. So where is the basketball money going to come from? And is Clemson going to be able to hang, or is Clemson going to be able to match the numbers that they need to allow Brad Brownell to get the players that he needs? Time will tell for sure. And another big negative to me is not only that we played Will Wade today, and Will Wade beat Clemson, but he did so with McNeese State, and he's going to go to NC State. And he's such a huge Clemson fan. He's a Clemson alum. But to eliminate your own school is a huge high for him and a huge low for everyone else, because what I'm about to say is, take away these 2 runs to the NCAA tournament, and 3 years ago, everybody wanted Will Wade. So there's a huge frustration concern there, and I don't even know if the Board of Trustees would ever even approve that based on his past. But there is some of that hey, there is a part of the fan base that is saying that's the guy we wanted, and he just drug us through the court, up and down the court, with a team that's not in a Power 5 conference, Power 4 conference, and also a team that wasn't picked to win, and it was a huge underdog. And now he's going to go to NC State, which is a huge rival that we really don't like at all. We just don't like anything about them, So you're going to have to deal with Will Wade a ton more going forward, and it's just going to keep reminding you of what you don't have if you're that Clemson fan base. Now, I think the majority of fan base don't really, let it bother them that much, but there is definitely, believe me, a portion of the fan base that wishes Will Wade was the coach for Clemson, and that was the case. So Brad Brownell's future, though, seems to be stable to me. I think he's done a great job stabilizing the program in general. I think he's done a great job building through the transfer portal and showing what can be done at Clemson. I think he's done a great job managing the money that's available. I think he's done a tremendous job going out and getting more money and getting more sponsors and boosters out there to kind of help out with the program. I think that he's filled the stadium, and he's also developed some players to a higher potential than maybe they were coming in. So to me, Brad Brownell is still he's not a bad coach. He is a good coach. He is still a coach that you'd want to have. But it does, ending the year like this was definitely frustrating. And I know there's going to be a lot of Clemson fans that want more, and that's rightfully so too. One and dones exist in March. We know that it happens, and it could happen again for Clemson, but we know that Clemson really, you don't want to keep be overly frustrated, because he has built up a team into something where he's done it back to back, and Clemson has historically struggled to even do that. So while a one and done is frustrating, it is something that is there, and just being there is I think a success. I know that's going to be kind of bittersweet to say that, but just being there is not a bad thing either, for sure, because there's been many years we know as Clemson fans that Clemson didn't make it. So I'm thankful for the season that they've had. I'm thankful for the players that we've had. It seemed like they've all been very invested in Clemson, and all wanted to do well and wanted to have a better end to the season than what we saw. And they still fought at the very end. To me, I would say let's erase, the first half for whatever reason. That's what happened. But the second half is the kind of Clemson team that we wanted to see. Unfortunately, when it comes to basketball, at least men's basketball, you do have to play two halves. That's for sure. All right. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen today. For your second listen, to check out Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. March is here. March Madness is here. Be the most informed college basketball fan. You're not going to be able to watch all the games. They will check them out. They will give you the rundown. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.